It's 2:47. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain. Now, the trans journalist India Willoughby has reported author JK Rowling to the police, or she says she has anyway, for an alleged hate crime for misgendering in online posts.
Well, JK Rowling refused to refer to Willoughby as a woman when engaging in an online debate about all-female locker rooms. But the Harry Potter author has responded, claiming that Willoughby's obsessive targeting of her, in her view, may meet the legal threshold for harassment.
Well, joining us now to discuss the legal boundaries of this row is discrimination lawyer Robin Moira White. Robin, thank you very much for joining us. It's getting rather heated on the Twitter sphere between JK Rowling and India Willoughby. India has, for a long time, not appreciated JK Rowling's interventions in the whole transgender debate and issue. And now India Willoughby claiming that she's reported JK Rowling to the police for misgendering. I mean, could that be a crime?
Well, it could be part of a crime. I mean, there are a whole series of, in the workplace or in service provision locations, the Equality Act applies. We're quite protective of free speech, though, in the UK, and there are a number of acts, relevant acts, the Communications Act, the Online Safety Protection Act, and potentially the Harassment Act from 1998. But in all cases, it requires really quite serious conduct to go across the line. And I'm not sure anything. I have been following the frankly unattractive exchanges on social media, and I don't think I've seen anything yet that goes across the line. Some of it's got quite close to it, and police forces are quite used to reports on occasion, I think, from people who are concerned, so that they're ready if people go that step further.
So what would be the line to cross? Because as you're right, this country does, nominally at least, support free speech. You should be allowed to be rude to someone else. I suppose harassment is a line about repeated, targeted. What's the legal boundary? Yeah,
well, in the Harassment Act requires a course of conduct. So it's more than one action. And the definition in the Harassment Act is a bit circular. It's harassment if a reasonable person would think it's harassment. So that sort of leaves it to the court. The other acts are quite carefully written. So the Communications Act, for example, for which there was, I think we've seen matters related to Harry Miller and Kate Scottow in the past, and that requires an intent to cause harm with a communication that's directed at someone. So from personal,
but this online the Communications Act, as far as I understand it, is the act that meant that someone who wrote a tweet that joked about British soldiers, or was it Sir Captain Tom Moore, ended up with some sort of sentence. There are people who sent WhatsApps making jokes about Grenfell who were prosecuted under this act. To some extent, it can be.
Wasn't there a dog that did a Nazi salute as well, and that got
that got into all sorts of. It was a pug. All sorts of legal trouble. So I suppose there are. This country isn't totally free speech,
I mean,
sadly.
There's a level. I mean, the Communications Act requires. I'm paraphrasing, but it requires something that's grossly offensive. So virtually any comparison of someone to a Nazi would be across that line, for example. Because of how people react to that. Virtually anything that called someone who wasn't a paedophile or a child abuser would be grossly offensive.
It's a difficult one, though, isn't it, Robin? Because JK Rowling is very much accusing India Willoughby of harassing her over a number of years, writing nasty things, going after her, targeting her over the course of many years, so she says. She says that lawyers advised her that not only did I have a clear winnable case against India Willoughby when it came to defamation, but that India's obsessive targeting of me over the past few years may meet the legal threshold for harassment. So they both believe they may have a legal case against one another. But is it not very, very important to note that also gender-critical views, i.e. the belief that, transgender women aren't women and so on, is also protected under equality law?
Well, the belief has an absolute protection. Manifestation of belief has a protection with limitations. So the case that everybody would be familiar with, the Forstater case in the EAT that established protection for gender-critical people, judge in that case said very clearly that what this wasn't was a license for people to go around misgendering people in workplaces, because if you do that to a work colleague, that's very likely to be unlawful harassment, unless it's done as it's a mistake or whatever. So there are balances and boundaries to be had between rights that mean all people should be able to live in comfort and peace, particularly in something like a workplace or a shop or a service delivery location.
No, really interesting stuff there. Robin Moira White, thank you very much for your expertise on this matter. Discrimination lawyer, of course. Emily, what do you make of that?
It's difficult. I mean, it doesn't really make an awful lot of sense, the equality laws around this, because if your belief is protected that you don't believe a man can become a woman, if that's protected in law, but then it's against the law to misgender someone in what could be considered an offensive manner, then those two surely contradict one another.
Well,
if you strongly have a held belief, you have to then pretend that you don't in order to get around the harassment laws and all of that.
I think that might have been more referring to sort of employment tribunals and the rest of it. If you're sort of pointedly shouting pronouns at someone, that might be considered to be...
I don't know, India Willoughby thinks she's got a case.
Yeah, it's true.
Against JK Rowling.
Fascinating to follow, but we don't have time.
We don't have free speech, really, do we?
No,
nominally.
No.
Nominally.
If you can be arrested for a tweet, we don't have free speech. Let's cross across to Martin Daubney. What's on your